The Seattle dawn was a bruise of gray, rain tapping a relentless rhythm on the windshield of Metro bus Route 42. Jake Harper, 42, eased into the driver's seat at 6:30 a.m., the familiar creak of the vinyl cushion grounding him. The air carried the sharp tang of stale coffee and engine oil, a scent that had woven itself into his life over 12 years of driving this route. His calloused hands adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of his own tired eyes that hadn't slept well since his daughter Lily's last chemo session. Jake's phone buzzed on the dashboard, a reminder blinking, Lily's meds due Friday. $1,200. He sighed, rubbing the stubble on his jaw. Another day, another dollar, he muttered, scrolling through texts from the hospital. Lily, only 16, was fighting leukemia with a stubbornness that both broke and mended his heart. Her treatment costs devoured his paycheck, leaving little for rent or the groceries he'd promised to pick up tonight. The engine rumbled to life, and Jake pulled out of the depot, the city waking in smears of neon and mist. Regular passengers boarded at their usual stops, their faces as predictable as the rain. Mrs. Clara Rodriguez, a grandmother with grocery bags slung over her arm, swiped her pass and offered a warm smile. "Morning, Jake. How's Lily holding up?" "She's tough," Jake replied, forcing a grin. "Meds are helping. Thanks for asking." Behind her, Mr. Leonard Daniels, a retired history professor, settled into the third row, already grading papers with a red pen. "Keep the faith, Jake," he called, not looking up. The rain thickened, drumming harder on the roof. Jake leaned forward, squinting through the wiper blade's frantic sweep. For once, he was on schedule, a small victory after two formal warnings from his supervisor, Karen Voss. The first was for a late run when he'd rushed Lily to the ER. The second for missing a shift to take his mother to a doctor's appointment. Karen's voice still echoed in his head. "One more delay, Harper, and you're out." At 7:10 a.m., as he turned onto Pine Street, the world narrowed to the slick asphalt and the blur of headlights. Then, through the rain-streaked windshield, he saw it, a crumpled shape on the sidewalk, half hidden by the downpour. His foot eased off the gas. What the hell is that? As the bus crept closer, his chest tightened. It was a dog, a golden retriever, its fur matted with blood and mud, trembling under the deluge. A mangled bicycle lay nearby, its front wheel bent like a warped coin. Jake's heart thudded. The dog's shallow breath sent puffs of mist into the air, its eyes glinting with pain. He glanced at the dashboard clock, 7:12 a.m. Still on time. The next bus on this route wouldn't pass for another 25 minutes. He gripped the wheel, Karen's warning clashing with the memory of Lily's old mutt, Sparky, who'd died in her arms 2 years ago. "She'd never forgive me if I left it there. I can't just drive past," he said aloud, his voice barely cutting through the rain's patter. "What's going on?" Mr. Daniels called from his seat, peering over his glasses. "Injured dog on the sidewalk," Jake answered, shifting the bus into park. "I gotta check it." Passengers murmured, some craning to see. Clara frowned. "Be quick, Jake. You know how Karen is." "Yeah, I know," he muttered, grabbing his Seahawks jacket from the seat beside him. Stepping into the storm, rain soaked his cap and stung his face. The dog, a hefty retriever, maybe 60 pounds, whimpered as he knelt beside it. Its left leg was gashed, blood seeping into the wet pavement, but the bone looked intact. "Easy, buddy," Jake whispered, his voice soft as he'd used with Lily during her worst nights. He reached out, and the dog's tongue flicked weakly against his hand, a fragile plea for help. Jake's throat tightened. He could radio dispatch, let animal control handle it, but 25 minutes might be too long for this dog. He checked his watch, 7:15 a.m. Every second he stayed, he chipped away at his schedule. "Karen's gonna bury me." But the dog's eyes, wide and trusting, pinned him in place. He draped his jacket over the retriever, shielding it from the rain. "Hang in there," he said, his hands trembling as he assessed the weight. Heavy, but manageable. With a grunt, he lifted the dog, its warmth seeping through his damp shirt. The retriever whined, but didn't struggle, its head lolling against his chest. Back at the bus, Jake climbed aboard, rain dripping from his cap. Passengers gaped, some whispering, others pulling out phones. "Anyone know a vet nearby?" he asked, laying the dog gently on the floor near the front. Clara was already scrolling her phone. Puget Sound Animal Clinic on 15th. 3 blocks. They're open. Call M, Jake said, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. A boy, maybe 9, edged closer, his backpack slung low. Is he gonna be okay? We're trying, kid, Jake said, meeting the boy's wide eyes. What's your name? Tim. Well, Tim, let's get this guy to a doctor. Jake slid back into the driver's seat, the clock now reading 7:18 a.m. Diverting to the clinic would cost him at least 15 minutes, enough to tip him into Karen's crosshairs. His hands tightened on the wheel, the weight of Lily's hospital bills pressing against the dog's faint whimpers. One good deed, he thought, and I could lose everything. Rain lashed Jake Harper's back as he carried the injured golden retriever, its weight straining his arms. The Seattle downpour had turned Pine Street into a river of reflections, neon signs bleeding into puddles. The dog's shallow breaths warmed his chest, each whimper a needle in his conscience. Jake's Seahawks jacket, now soaked, draped loosely over the retriever, doing little to shield it from the storm. His watch read 7:18 a.m. Every second he spent out here pushed him further behind schedule, closer to the edge of Karen Voss's patience. He climbed aboard the Metro bus, Route 42, rain dripping from his cap onto the floor. The passengers' faces were a gallery of reactions: concern, impatience, curiosity. Mrs. Clara Rodriguez, still clutching her grocery bags, was on her phone, her voice brisk. Puget Sound Animal Clinic? Yes, we've got an injured dog. Hit by a bike. Looks like. Can you take him now? She glanced at Jake, nodding. They're ready for us. 3 blocks, 15th Avenue. Jake set the dog down gently near the front, its blood-streaked fur stark against the bus's grimy floor. The retriever's eyes, glazed with pain, flicked up to meet his. Hang in there, buddy, he whispered, crouching to adjust the jacket. The dog's tongue grazed his hand, a faint gesture that hit him like a punch. Lily would have done the same for Sparky, he thought, picturing his daughter's tear-streaked face when their old mutt passed. Tim, the 9-year-old with the oversized backpack, edged closer, his sneakers squeaking on the wet floor. Will he make it? His voice trembled, eyes wide as he stared at the dog's gashed leg. We're getting him to a vet, Tim. That's the best we can do, Jake said, forcing steadiness into his tone. He stood, scanning the passengers. Anyone else got a vet contact? Just in case. Mr. Leonard Daniels, the retired professor, looked up from his papers. Puget sounds good. They've got a 24-hour emergency line. You're doing the right thing, Jake. Tell that to my boss, Jake muttered, sliding into the driver's seat. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter's nurse. Sarah, Lily's asking for you. Call when you can. His stomach twisted. Not now. He silenced the phone and gripped the wheel, the clock ticking to 7:20 a.m. The detour to the clinic would add at least 15 minutes, maybe 20 if traffic on 15th was bad. Karen's last warning replayed in his head. One more delay, Harper, and you're done. Clara hung up her call. They're prepping a table. Said to hurry, the leg's bad, but it's treatable if we're quick. Jake nodded, restarting the engine. The bus lurched forward, wipers slapping at the rain. Hold on, everyone, he called, his voice tighter than he meant. The passengers settled, some whispering, others staring at the dog. Tim knelt beside it, murmuring, "You're gonna be okay," as if willpower alone could stitch the retriever's wounds. The detour felt like a betrayal of routine, each block stretching Jake's nerves thinner. He'd been on time for the first time in weeks, and now this. 2 prior warnings already hung over him. One for rushing Lily to the ER during a fever spike, another for missing a shift to get his mother to a specialist. Karen Voss didn't care about explanations. Rules are rules, she'd said, her pen tapping like a gavel. Jake, you sure about this? Clara asked, leaning forward. Karen's been on your case. I know, he said, eyes fixed on the road. But I can't leave him out there. Not like that. Daniels chimed in, his voice calm but firm. They can't fire you for saving a life. It's not just a dog, it's someone's family. Jake's jaw clenched. Family doesn't pay Lily's hospital bills. He turned onto 15th Avenue, the clinic's sign glowing faintly through the rain. His heart pounded, a mix of dread and defiance. One good deed, he thought, and I'm risking everything. At 7:32 a.m., he pulled up to Puget Sound Animal Clinic, the bus's brakes hissing. The glass doors slid open, and Dr. Patel, a vet in green scrubs, rushed out with an assistant. Bring him in, she called, waving Jake toward the entrance. Jake lifted the retriever again, its weight heavier now, or maybe that was his exhaustion. The dog whimpered, its head lolling against his shoulder. Almost there, he murmured. stepping into the clinic's sterile warmth. Passengers watched from the bus, some snapping photos, others murmuring support. Inside, Jake laid the dog on an exam table, the jacket falling away to reveal the full extent of the injuries, a deep gash on the leg, blood crusting its golden fur. Dr. Patel's hands moved quickly, checking vitals. Hit by a bike, you said? Found him next to a wrecked one on Pine, Jake replied, wiping rain from his face. He's got a chip? Checking now, the assistant said, scanning the dog's neck. A beep confirmed it. Got one. We'll contact the owner. Good, Jake said, glancing at his watch. 7:35 a.m. He was 15 minutes behind schedule, with half the route left. I gotta get back. Keep me posted? Dr. Patel nodded, already prepping a syringe. You did the right thing bringing him here. We'll take it from now. Jake hesitated, looking at the retriever one last time. Its eyes, less panicked now, seemed to hold a quiet gratitude. Worth it, he thought, though doubt gnawed at him. He jogged back to the bus, rain soaking his shirt. The passengers clapped softly as he boarded, Tim grinning. You're a hero, Mr. Jake. Not if I'm unemployed, Jake said under his breath, restarting the engine. As he pulled away, Clara leaned forward again. You're a good man, Jake. Don't let Karen tell you otherwise. He managed a nod, but his hands trembled on the wheel. The road ahead blurred, not just from rain but from the weight of what came next. Karen's text was waiting. He knew it. See me after your shift. His choice to save the dog had set something in motion, and the consequences were closing in. The Seattle rain had softened to a drizzle as Jake Harper guided the Metro bus back onto Route 42, the engine's hum of faint comfort against the storm in his mind. The dashboard clock glared 7:40 a.m., 20 minutes behind schedule, a delay that felt like a noose tightening. His phone vibrated in his pocket, a text from his supervisor, Karen Voss, depot office after your shift. Don't be late. Jake's stomach churned, the words blurring with the rain-streaked windshield. He'd saved the injured retriever, but at what cost? The remaining stops passed in a haze. Passengers boarded and exited, their faces blending into a fog of routine. Mrs. Clara Rodriguez offered a sympathetic nod as she stepped off, her grocery bags rustling. You did good, Jake. For what it's worth. Mr. Leonard Daniels, the retired professor, lingered at the final stop, his papers tucked under his arm. You're a decent man, Jake. Don't let this break you. Decent doesn't pay for Lily's meds, Jake replied, his voice low, barely masking the bitterness. Daniels clapped his shoulder before disappearing into the gray morning. Alone in the bus, Jake checked his phone, 2 missed calls from Lily's hospital, a voicemail he couldn't bring himself to play. Not yet. He pulled into the depot at 8:15 a.m., the lot slick with puddles reflecting the overcast sky. The walk to Karen's office felt like a march to judgment. The depot's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the concrete floor. Jake's damp shirt clung to his skin, the chill seeping deeper than the rain. He knocked on the door marked Karen Voss, operations manager, his knuckles heavy against the wood. Come in, Karen's voice snapped, sharp as a whip. Jake entered, the air thick with the scent of coffee and bureaucracy. Karen sat behind her desk, her glasses perched low as she flipped through a folder, his file, no doubt. Her gray blazer and tight bun gave her the look of a judge, not a manager. Sit, she said, pointing to a chair without looking up. Jake sat, his hands clasped to steady them. Karen, I can explain. 20 minutes late, Jake, she cut in, her eyes flicking up, cold and unyielding. Passengers missed connections. I've got complaints stacking up. She slid a termination letter across the desk, the Metro logo stark against the white paper. This is your 3rd violation. You're done. It was a dog, Karen. Hit by a bike, bleeding out on Pine Street. I couldn't just. Rules are rules, she interrupted, her pen tapping the desk like a metronome. You've had 2 warnings already. One for that ER run for your daughter, another for missing a shift for your mother. I gave you chances. Lily's sick, Karen. Leukemia. And my mom's heart condition, you know this. Jake's voice cracked, anger and desperation colliding. The dog was someone's family. I got it to the vet. It's alive because of me. Karen's expression didn't soften. And passengers missed their jobs because of you. This isn't personal, Jake. It's business. She pushed the letter closer. Sign it. Clear your locker. Security will escort you out. Jake stared at the paper, 12 years of early mornings, late nights, and overtime reduced to a single signature. His mind raced, Lily's chemo, the hospital bills, rent due in a week. I can make it up, he said, leaning forward. Extra shifts, weekends, anything. It's over, Jake. Sign. Her tone was final, a door slamming shut. Numb, he scrawled his name, the pen shaking in his hand. He stood, the chair scraping against the floor, and walked to his locker in a daze. The metal door creaked open, revealing a photo of Lily at 14, grinning with Sparky, their old mutt. He packed it with a spare jacket and a thermos, 12 years fitting into a small cardboard box. Security guard Mike, a grizzled veteran, met him at the exit. Sorry, man. You didn't deserve this. Thanks, Mike, Jake mumbled, stepping into the drizzle. The depot gate clanged shut behind him, a sound that echoed like a cell door. He boarded a bus as a passenger for the first time in years, the irony bitter. Route 42 carried him through familiar streets, but the city felt alien now, its pulse out of sync with his own. His phone buzzed again, another hospital call. He let it go to voicemail, unable to face the news. How do I tell Lily I'm jobless? The thought gnawed at him, each block deepening his dread. At his Capitol Hill apartment, Jake fumbled with his keys, the box of belongings heavy in his arms. As he opened the door, a slip of paper fluttered to the floor, tucked under the mat. He froze, heart pounding. In stark black ink, it read, "We know what you did. Stay quiet." No signature, no clue who left it. His eyes darted to the street, but the rain-soaked sidewalk was empty. Inside, Sarah, Lily's nurse, looked up from her book. "You're early, Jake. Everything okay?" He set the box down, the note burning in his pocket. "Lost my job," he said, his voice hollow. "Saved a dog. Broke the schedule. Third strike." Sarah's face fell. "That's not fair." "What happened?" "Took the dog to a vet. Karen didn't care." He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "And now this." He pulled out the note, sliding it across the table. Sarah's eyes widened as she read it. "What's this about? Who's it we?" "No idea," Jake said, his voice tight. "But someone's watching me." The weight of the day, Lily's bills, the firing, the cryptic threat pressed down, a storm darker than the one outside. He'd done the right thing, but the cost was climbing, and the shadows were closing in. Jake Harper sat in his dimly lit Capitol Hill apartment, the cryptic note, "We know what you did. Stay quiet," clutched in his hand. The Seattle rain tapped a restless rhythm against the window, mirroring the pulse of dread in his chest. The words, scrawled in stark black ink, felt like a blade held too close. Who had slipped it under his door? And why? His firing from Metro earlier that day, after saving an injured dog, was punishment enough. Now this. Sarah, Lily's nurse, leaned across the kitchen table, her eyes wide as she read the note again. "Jake, this is serious. You need to call the police." "And tell them what?" Jake's voice was rough, worn thin by the day's weight. "That I got canned and someone's playing mind games? I've got nothing to go on." He stuffed the note into his pocket, the paper crumpling under his fingers. "Lily's meds are due Friday. Rent's next week. I can't deal with this now." Sarah softened, her hand resting on his arm. "You'll figure it out. You always do." Jake managed a weak nod, but doubt gnawed at him. 12 years driving Route 42, and one act of compassion had cost him everything. His phone buzzed, shattering the silence, an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Yeah, Jake Harper? This is Dr. Ellis from Puget Sound Animal Clinic." The vet's voice was calm, professional. "The dog you brought in this morning? A golden retriever? He belongs to Victor Grayson. He'd like to meet you. Can you come to the clinic now?" Jake's brow furrowed. The note's warning echoed, "Stay quiet," but the vet's call felt unrelated, a lifeline in the dark. "Grayson? Who's he?" "A client. He's grateful for what you did. Says it's urgent." Jake glanced at Sarah, who gave an encouraging nod. "All right. I'll be there in 20. He stood, grabbing his damp Seahawks cap. "Sarah, can you stay with Lily?" "Of course," she said. "Be careful, Jake." The bus ride to the clinic was surreal, the familiar Route 42 now from a passenger's view. Jake's eye scanned every face, every shadow, half expecting the note's author to emerge. The rain had eased, leaving streets glossy under streetlights. At Puget Sound Animal Clinic, the glass doors glowed warmly, a contrast to the chill in his bones. Inside, a man in a tailored navy suit stood by the reception desk, his presence commanding despite the late hour. Mid-50s, with silver-flecked hair and a gaze sharp as cut glass, he turned as Jake approached. "Jake Harper?" he asked, extending a hand. "Victor Grayson. My dog, Rusty, is alive because of you." Jake shook his hand, wary. "Glad he's okay. Just did what felt right." The receptionist gestured toward a quiet corner, where a retriever, Rusty, lay in a recovery crate, bandaged but alert. Victor's expression softened as he looked at the dog. Rusty's more than a pet. He's all I have left of my son, who passed 3 years ago. You didn't just save a dog today, Jake. Jake shifted, uneasy under Victor's intensity. I couldn't leave him out there. He was hurting. Victor studied him, as if weighing his soul. Why risk your job? Most wouldn't. Didn't feel like a choice, Jake said, his voice low. I've got a daughter, Lily. She's sick. Had a dog like Rusty once. I'd want someone to stop for him. Victor nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. I run Grayson Logistics, corporate transport, high-end shuttles for tech execs. We're expanding. I need drivers with character, not just clock punchers. Interested? Jake blinked, the offer catching him off guard. A job? Just like that. Better pay than Metro, 40% higher. Full benefits, including medical, for your family. Start Monday. Victor's tone was matter of fact, but his gaze held an edge, like he knew more than he let on. Why me? Jake asked, suspicion creeping in. You don't know me. I checked your record, Victor said, unfazed. 12 years, no accidents, glowing passenger feedback, until today. I value people who do what's right, even when it costs them. Jake's mind raced. The salary could cover Lily's meds, maybe even get them ahead on rent. But the note burned in his pocket, a warning he couldn't ignore. He glanced outside, where 2 black SUVs idled across the street, their tinted windows opaque. His pulse quickened. Those are yours, he asked, nodding toward the vehicles. Victor followed his gaze, his jaw tightening. No, and I don't like the look of them. He stepped closer, voice lowering. What's going on, Jake? You're jumpy. Jake hesitated, then pulled out the note, handing it over. Found this under my door an hour ago. No idea who sent it. Victor's eyes narrowed as he read, his demeanor shifting from warm to steely. This isn't random. Your boss, Karen Voss, she's tied to a rival firm, Cascade Transports. They've been poaching our clients, undercutting routes. Your firing wasn't just about a delay. It was a message. Jake's fists clenched, anger flaring. Karen set me up? For what? To keep you quiet, Victor said. You diverted to my clinic, a Grayson client. Cascade doesn't like us poking around. That note's a scare tactic to shut you down. Jake's head spun. The dog, the delay, the firing, it was all part of a larger game, one he'd stumbled into blindly. What do they think I know? Nothing yet, Victor said. But I do. I've got evidence, emails, payments, proving Karen's leaking Metro routes to Cascade. Join me, and we'll expose her. Legally. Jake stared at Rusty, the dog's steady breathing a reminder of why he'd stopped. One act of kindness had unraveled a conspiracy, but the SUVs outside hinted at deeper danger. I'm in, he said, his voice firm despite the fear. For Lily. And for answers. Victor clapped his shoulder. Good. We start tomorrow. Watch your back tonight. As Jake left the clinic, the SUVs pulled away, their taillights vanishing into the rain. The note's warning echoed, but so did Victor's promise. Jake had lost his job, but he'd gained a fight, one he intended to win. Jake Harper stood outside Puget Sound Animal Clinic, the Seattle night air damp against his skin. The 2 black SUVs had vanished into the rain-slicked streets, but their presence lingered like a shadow. Victor Grayson's words echoed in his mind. Your firing wasn't just about a delay. It was a message. The cryptic note, we know what you did. Stay quiet, still burned in his pocket, a warning tied to a conspiracy he'd unwittingly stumbled into. Karen Voss, his former boss, was colluding with Cascade Transports, a rival firm, and sabotaging Victor's company, Grayson Logistics. Jake's act of compassion, saving an injured dog, had landed him in the crosshairs. Victor handed him a folder, the contract inside outlining a new job, 40% higher pay, full medical coverage for Lily, his leukemia-stricken daughter, and a signing bonus. Sign this, and you're with us, Victor said, his silver-flecked hair catching the clinic's light. But there's more. Karen's been leaking Metro routes to Cascade. That note was meant to scare you off. Help me expose her, and we'll take them down, legally. Jake's anger surged, hot and sharp. Karen fired me to cover her tracks? All because I took Rusty to your clinic? Exactly, Victor said, his voice low. Cascade wants Grayson out of the game. You're collateral damage, but you're also a witness. Your statement could tie Karen to the scheme. Jake gripped the folder, his knuckles whitening. Lily's hospital bills, the rent, the endless weight of survival. It all hinged on this moment. He thought of the dog, Rusty, now resting in a crate nearby, his bandaged leg a testament to Jake's choice. One good deed had cost him his job, but opened a door to justice. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady. "Let's make her pay." Victor's lips curved into a grim smile. "Meet my legal team tomorrow. We'll prep your statement. For now, get some rest. And watch your back." Jake nodded, stepping into the drizzle. The street was empty, but he felt eyes on him. The notes thread a whisper in the dark. The bus ride home was quiet, the city's pulse muted by his racing thoughts. At his Capitol Hill apartment, he found Sarah, Lily's nurse, dozing on the couch. She stirred as he closed the door. "Any trouble?" "Not yet," Jake said, setting the folder down. He didn't mention the SUVs or the conspiracy. It felt too raw, too dangerous. "Got a job offer. Better pay, benefits. Starts Monday." Sarah's face lit up. "Jake, that's incredible. Lily will be thrilled." He forced a smile, the note's weight anchoring him. "Yeah, let's hope it sticks." The weekend blurred into meetings with Victor's legal team, a sharp-eyed group in a downtown office overlooking Elliott Bay. Jake recounted the day's events: the dog, the delay, Karen's cold dismissal. They pored over emails Victor had obtained, proof of Karen's payments from Cascade, routed through shell accounts. "This is enough for fraud charges," the lead attorney, Mara, said. "Your testimony seals it." Jake signed affidavits, each pen stroke a step toward reclaiming his life. But fear lingered. He checked his locks twice, scanned the street for SUVs, and kept his phone close, expecting another threat. None came, but the silence felt heavier than the rain. On Monday, Jake started at Grayson Logistics, driving sleek black shuttles for tech execs. The job was a world away from Metro's grime: clean vehicles, polite clients, and a paycheck that could keep Lily's treatment on track. He wore a crisp uniform, the Grayson logo embroidered on his chest, and felt a flicker of pride for the first time in months. Yet Karen's betrayal gnawed at him, a wound that wouldn't close. Midweek, Victor called. "It's done," he said, his voice triumphant. "Metro investigated Karen based on our evidence. She's been fired, and the DA's filing fraud charges. Cascade's under scrutiny too." Jake exhaled, relief flooding him. "The SUVs?" "The note. Hard muscle from Cascade's security firm," Victor said. "They were tailing you to intimidate, but we've got their license plates. They're off your trail. You're safe." Jake leaned against the shuttle, the Puget Sound glittering in the distance. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Victor said. "You saved Rusty. That's why you're here." That night, Jake sat by Lily's hospital bed, her hand small and fragile in his. The room smelled of antiseptic, but her smile was a burst of warmth. "Sarah said you got a new job," she said, her voice weak but bright. "And you saved a dog?" "Yeah, kid," Jake said, his throat tight. "His name's Rusty. He's gonna be okay." "Like us?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Like us," he said, squeezing her hand. "Things are looking up." Lily drifted to sleep, her breathing steady. Jake watched her, the weight of the past week lifting. One act of kindness had unraveled a web of deceit, securing his family's future and restoring his faith. Karen faced justice, Cascade's schemes were crumbling, and Jake had a new start. The note, the SUVs, the firing, they'd tested him, but he'd emerged stronger. As he left the hospital, the Seattle sky was clear, stars piercing the dark. Jake thought of Rusty, of Lily, of the road ahead. Sometimes, doing right was its reward, but tonight, it was also his redemption.